Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I want to discuss a few things about Saturn in Pisces. So the new moon in Pisces is about 10 minutes away. So I thought this is a great opportunity to sit down, take you through the houses, give you some insights around what you can expect with Saturn in Pisces. One thing is for sure, I know when Saturn changes signs or major Saturn transits are occurring for somebody, for example, a Saturn return, a lot of people really start to freak out. And I guess there's more than one way to look at these transits. And I hope this video might give you a little bit of hope and inspiration as much as we can expect. So I can't remember when it was now. It feels like a while ago. I did a Jupiter and Pisces video and took that through the houses. I'll put a link in the description below so you can look at that as well, which house was activated, maybe what opportunities were presented. And the next couple of years are really going to be about maybe solidifying or consolidating some of the chances or the opportunities or the good fortune that Jupiter may have brought you in your Pisces house. So before we get into a few of these ideas, I just want to give you the dates and the data around Saturn. So Saturn's going to move into Pisces on March 7, where it's going to stay until May 26. Then it's going to be zooming along and it's going to slip into Aries for a little while, and then it's going to come back a few months later on September 2, where it will then stay until the 15th of February of 2026, sorry. So that is the Saturn in Pisces journey. So for some of you, this is going to be a Saturn return. For some of you, might be the second Saturn return. So if you were born, so I'm going to take you through the last Saturn in transit, Saturn in Pisces transit dates now. So we're looking to the mid-90s was the last time that Saturn was there. So yeah, like almost 30 years ago. I remember. It was a big time in my life. Okay, so May 27 through to June 30. Of 1993. So that was a very brief ingress of Saturn at that time. And then it came back to, Saturn came back to Pisces on the 29th of January of 1994, where it stayed until the 8th of April, 1996. So if you were born between those dates, so late May through to June, about a 5-week period, or all January, all 1995, and up until the 8th of April, 1996, you're having a first Saturn return. Now, of course, there's going to be some of you watching, I'm sure, who are going to be having your second. And that will be the case if you were born between the 25th of March, 1964, to the 19th of September of 1964. And then Saturn came back in December 17 of 1964 through to early March, which was March 4 of 1967. So Saturn in Pisces kind of goes in and out of Aries, Pisces, like Jupiter's done. So it is the dates are a little, that's why I wanted to go through the dates with you, because it's not a full block of Saturn in Pisces. So you might have been born, say, for example, October 1964, but you would not have Saturn in Pisces. So each iteration of Saturn in Pisces is going to be different. Each one will have its own unique flavor based on the general zeitgeist of the time, as well as the other planetary aspects that are happening in conjunction with it. So some people might be thinking about the 90s and relating it to this time. And yes, there will be definitely some overlay. And then some people might be relating it to the 60s and linking it to this time. And yes, there will be some overlay with that too. What makes the 60s similar yet different is that, yes, Jupiter was in Taurus through part of Saturn's cycle through Pisces in the 60s, which is that combination happens every 60 years, Jupiter and Saturn. But what makes the mid-60s period, really memorable in history and volatile and changing was the fact that Uranus and Pluto were in opposition to that Saturn. So many of my childhood people that I enjoyed in culture were born in the mid-60s, or through the 60s, really, because, I'm a kid of the 70s, or born in the 70s. And so, so there has their own unique flavor. Then the 90s was a little bit different again. And what was different about the 90s? Well, firstly, we didn't have Jupiter with Saturn. Jupiter was far away. But in 1989, so a few years before Saturn got to Pisces, we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. Okay, so my clients born in the 1989 are born with this. And so Saturn and Neptune conjoined in Capricorn in 1989, and they actually were conjoined throughout February, March, June, July, and October and November this year. So that was an interesting time in history. I'll just name a couple of things just to jog the memory for those who are old enough to remember. We had a lot of changes in power structures in Europe at that time, mainly the fall of the Soviet Union, sort of led by Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania at the time. Tiananmen Square. We had the first election in Brazil for 30 years. Apartheid began in South Africa. The internet was introduced, or proposed, I should say, to Australia and New Zealand and Japan during that period of time. First women bishop in the Anglican tradition. The first 24-hour GPS systems were put into orbit. So that's an interesting one, but I'm not going to go there with too much of the collective stuff, although I'm happy to do a video if you want it. And then the Soviet Union stuff, which I already mentioned. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but what makes this particular transit that we're moving into now linked to that in 1989 is that was the opening that was the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And now when Saturn moves into Pisces, we're going to have that conjunction again. So that end of the cycle that began all the way back in 1989. Though Saturn and Neptune don't conjoin until they get to 0 Aries in a couple of years' time, but we're basically at the end of a cycle that began in 1989. And so the last Saturn in Pisces iteration in the mid-90s there's a link to that, and of course to 1989. So a few weeks ago, or maybe longer than that now, a little while ago, I was online chatting with a friend and a colleague who some of you might know, Drew Levanti, and he asked me, what did it feel like? I think I was sharing some reels on Instagram about some of the amazing music that came out at that time. And it really prompted me to reflect, like, how did it feel, and really helped me remember what I went through in those mid-90s, which was a huge era of time, for me at least. And I thought about it for a minute, and it was a time where grunge was massive. I think it sort of started around 1989, to be honest, or it was emerging. But by the time Saturn in Pisces hit, it was flooded. Like, it was everywhere. I mean, and I was, as I always am, I'm always sort of straddling boundaries. And at the time, you couldn't like grunge or you couldn't like metal. You had to have one or the other. You couldn't have both. But I had both. I didn't care what the rules were, even back then. Haven't changed a bit. Sorry, I'm just bumping my table everywhere. So grunge was huge. If you were more into the black metal scene, what was coming out of Norway, Sweden, massive. And I loved it all. So there was that. And, it was a magical time, very Saturn in Pisces. It was very enchanted. And, whether you were into these genres or music or not, it really did feel like there was something about that era of time. Well, obviously it was so short-lived, because pretty much by the time Kurt Cobain committed suicide, Saturn, eventually moved into Aries. It became like new metal, and everything just felt less magical, if you like. And, around the mid-90s too was when this term information superhighway started to become a thing, and the internet. And it was almost like, now on reflection, when you think about the fact that Saturn is the last planet we see with our naked eye, so it dictates the boundaries of the universe as we know it. And Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. There's something about it that signifies an ending, something like a beautiful, bittersweet moment of magic that is very fleeting, or very, if you could just bottle that essence and keep it forever. Obviously, not everything about that period of time was like that. But there was something about it that we were on the precipice of something new that was really, back in the day, the internet was like awesome. It was nothing like now. There's still definitely nice things about it now, don't get me wrong, but I don't think we stopped and savored just how wonderful parts of that mid-90s were. We had stuff that just doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to give you an example, right? And some people might, turn their noses up or give me some shitty comments about it. And I'm like, whatever. But supermodels, supermodels in the 90s were a thing. These unrealistic women that we all idolized, whether it was healthy or not, that's a whole different segue there. But that's just an example of something that was unattainable, magical, and inspiring. I found it that. I don't know if anyone else does, but it was a thing. We don't see that anymore. Just use grunge because it's the most popular. Not everyone is into my crazy black metal bands, but there was something very unique and different and culture shifting about grunge music. And it was, if you think about Saturn, it's got that melancholy influence to it. It came out of Seattle, which is a kind of a misty, watery city. I've been there. I've spent time there, and it used a lot of water, foggy. So yeah, it really fits. And so I guess my point is that I'm really curious to think about and wonder, what is it going to be with the next couple of years that there's going to be a piece of magic that we may not realize that was magic until it's no longer a part of our experience. It might be cash. It might be a certain freedom of the internet. It might be that we have to deal with certain structures with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, having to deal with this dream of control, very Saturn, Neptune. And how do we navigate life around that? And we'll look back in time and go, remember when? Which we used to do in the 90s too. Every generation has its own little signature, right? Is it going to be Saturn in Pisces going to be living in like some free range prison? Is it going to be, the last frontier before we really start seeing real well, it's already here, but, you know, the eventuality of feudalism in another 50, 100, 150 years. So it's almost like, you know, there's something to extract out of that. And yes, that all does sound very dreary and depressing, Saturn in Pisces, but from that, we can, in a little corner of our life, in a little corner, you know, called a house in the birth chart, commit to something magical. And this might be a spiritual practice. It might be finding enchantment in your own life. And when I say getting off grid, well, yes, I would love to do that in reality, create my own tribe. But getting off grid in terms of de-digitalizing yourself somewhat, and then moving into something that really is magical or inspires you, something that makes your life meaningful, and more tangible and more real, because Pisces isn't those things. It's the evocation of those things. That's why Venus is exalted there, right? But Saturn is asking you, what are you going to do with it? So I could talk about this all day, but if you do want to hear me talk about it more, I do have a webinar coming up. I don't know if I've mentioned that already. On the 6th, I'll put a link where you can register for that if you're interested. And of course, the Golden Circle is a great place to be if you would like to be in a like-minded community, to communicate more openly, and to, you know, dive into the astro with me on a regular basis. So without further ado, let's just jump into the houses. So again, just to reiterate, you know, it's not like this is our first rodeo with Pisces. We've had Neptune, so it's really hot, humid as here in Brisbane in the heat of summer. We've had Neptune there since 2011. And then, of course, Jupiter has had its way there 21, 22. So we've also got, in another 18 months, we'll have the nodes come through there as well. So Pisces is a part of the sky that is going to be activated for a while. So if you have Pisces rising or are a Pisces, whenever Saturn comes into the first house, it's about health, vitality, and your wellness. So for some Pisceans, this might be the recognition or the realization that there's going to be some limits around what you can do physically or within certain time frames. You know, with Jupiter moving through, maybe you said yes to too much. Maybe you've overdone it a little bit, and Saturn's going to go, well, no, actually, you need to consolidate. You need to figure out what your top priority is. And FYI, priorities is actually not a word etymologically. It's priority. It's a very modern Western thing to sort of train us to have more than one thing that's important to us. So again, case in point, streamline. Okay, pick your, you know, 2 to 3 most important rocks, and then all the other rocks that just kind of fall around that main structure. So this might mean you have to take better care of your health, your wellness, say no more often. Now, this can feel like a heavy transit, to be sure, but with that heaviness comes clarity. It also comes with responsibility. It's about defining limits. It's one thing that Saturn does so well. It discerns the limits, delineates the limit, and what are you available for and what you're not. What are you willing to tolerate and accept and what you're not. So it's going to be a bit of a CEO transit of your life, what you're doing, where you're going, and where you've been and where you want to move forward to. So I think it's kind of exciting. For some, It's a skinny phase, so that can be good too, to tidy up maybe the waistline a little bit or tighten up some healthy habits if Jupiter has expanded the waistline a little bit for you. So it can really help you in that department too, if that's a concern or a desire for you. So Aquarius, so this is going to be a second house issue. No one really likes the idea of Saturn coming through the second. You know, it's a thing. It happens to us all. It's just your turn now. So my advice would be start embracing the concept of short-term pain for long-term gain. So delayed gratification is going to be your best friend in the next couple of years. So this will be a period of consolidation. So if you've maybe got different streams of income, which is often wise, but it might be about, what do I really want to focus on or concentrate on? What's leaking my energy, whether that is the money that you bring in or the money that you're spending. So tightening up the purse strings is going to be a thing. Now, this might mean because there's just generally a lack of money. Maybe it's that case of there's more month at the end of your money during this transit. For others, it may be that you are you're just tightening the purse strings to keep a bigger buffer, which is wise for all of us right now, like, let's be honest. So you might be siphoning more money to, pay for debt or repay debt or save or invest, which just might mean you have a little bit less fun money, if you like. This is going to be taking the money seriously kind of transit as well, rather than just kind of living, paycheck to paycheck, or buy the essentials and then blow the rest. This might be, okay, well, what do I really want to, where do I want to position myself financially in the next couple of years, and starting to actively work towards that. This can also be a transit of developing your confidence and your skills. The second house is all about sustenance and those support, what sustains you and what supports you, because it rises up to the first, right? So this might be a transit of developing your confidence and skills. So for some, this might be, these are my rates. This is what I'm going to charge. This is what I'm worth. Maybe it's about, well, I need to find a higher paying job and taking ownership of that and going out and getting what you deserve. So it can be that test of confidence, which, Saturn's going to test that, which may also mean second guessing yourself a little bit. And that's going to be a part of that learning curve. So getting some mastery or maturity around money and your attitude toward it, and going out and getting it as well. So for Capricorn rising, it's going to be your third house. And I'm a bit of a fan of the third house. In one of my videos, actually, it wasn't really a video, it was a webinar I did for Nightlight Astrology. I've actually posted it for free on my YouTube channel, or on this channel. And it's about the houses of meaning being the third and the ninth. So I might pop a link to that below for you as well. Just drop myself down a little note for that. So Saturn, daily rituals and habits. So if you find that time is just slipping through your fingers and you don't have any time for developing a practice that brings meaning to your life, Saturn's going to demand that you're going to do it. And this might mean, even if it's just waking up 20 minutes before the rest of your household and enjoying a morning coffee in peace. Maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you need to commit yourself to what I like to call mental mastery. The third house is very much about writing, reading, and communicating, learning. So you might dedicate yourself to learning something. Maybe this is just finishing all the books on your bookshelf that you buy and don't get around to reading. So it might even just be simple as, I want to commit to, by the end of the year, I want to have read X number of books. That's actually a personal goal for myself. Is it what is it that you want to do that's meaningful? Okay, like when you get to the end of your days, what have you done? Have you just, done the Groundhog Day, or have you devoted time to developing some type of practice? This could be magical, astrological, spiritual, whatever. Because remember that the third house opposes the ninth. So what are you doing on the daily that's helping you reach those ninth house spiritual goals? So when it comes to the day-to-day routines, what are you doing that's going to have that longer term benefit? Those things that we go, oh, we just never have time for, or you get to home at the end of the day or what have you, and you can't be bothered. Saturn's going to, no, you committed to those things, get it done. So if you've got subscriptions to Patreons or podcasts or different courses and things, if you've bought a whole bunch of astrology webinars and never listened to them and taken the notes and done the learning, this is your call to do that. If you're a Sag, it's going to be your fourth house that's activated by Saturn in the next couple of years. So it's interesting because by and large, Sagittarius has this reputation for being that rolling stone that gathers no moss. And so Saturn comes down and it's like asking you to put roots down somewhere, to create a stable foundation, maybe realizing a domestic dream as well, after Jupiter and Neptune's been there too. So this, for some Sagittarians, it might be about consolidating or downsizing. This might be really true if you are, especially if you're having a second Saturn return. Maybe your children have flown the coop and you're thinking, do I need this big house anymore? If it's your first Saturn return, maybe you're feeling like you're ready to make a different commitment in your domestic life. And that might mean a mortgage. It might mean living in a more committed way rather than flatmates. So, maybe it's a relationship situation or something of the like. At some level, I would imagine for you, there would be a restructuring of your domestic dynamics and family, including the family relationships. But by and large, Saturn's going to ask you to create a solid foundation from which you can use as a springboard to, live the rest of your life from. That home and hearth is going to be really, more important or more of a focus for you than usual. It could also bring some kind of ending or completion around a current family or living situation as well. Just that commitment to a family life might be more important. Maybe you have this feeling like, I want to own my own home, or maybe you want to invest in one for down the track. Saturn might even ask you to renovate or restructure the home in some way as well. It can be a very interesting time to look back on ancestry and roots and lineage and things that are old or heirloom in your home, in your lineage, in your life. It's a really interesting. There'll be changes on the home front for sure. If you're Scorpio, this is going to be a little bit of an oxymoron, because Saturn through the 5th can feel like a bit of a buzzkill for fun, romance, and joy. But again, coming back to the idea of Saturn and time, how many things do you really love to do, but you turn around and go, well, just don't have the time, or never have the time, or what have you? This might be a regular gym attendance. It might be making the time for children. Maybe you work too hard and you just forget to have time with your kids. Maybe you're single and you're so caught up in the day-to-day that you don't get out there and you don't go to the concerts or go to the theater or whatever it is that you like to do, to go out there. I mean, no one's coming knocking on your door and they'll just track you on the dating app. So maybe that's not a good thing, but it is about committing to joy. Okay. Committing to to the moments in life that create memories. And that's Saturn in Pisces. It's not about the 5 years of Saturn that we've had, which is about survival in some respects. This is about bringing some magic back into the life. So maybe you just want to dedicate to yourself to a hobby or a creative practice. Maybe you really love to paint. Maybe you love to, shred a guitar. Maybe you've always wanted to learn to play one. Whatever it is, this is about committing to something that's for no purpose other than just pure pleasure and enjoyment. And that, what really makes the soul come alive. Those times where I had a party. Well, I didn't have the party, but my son and I went to a good friend of mine's place, and there was the pool, and there was other boys, and well, I think I might have mentioned that in my last video actually. And he was like, Mom, why does the time go so fast when you're having fun? And it does, but when you're at work or school, it goes forever. So Saturn in Pisces is like, make time for fun, make time for children, or for your inner child if you don't have any. For some Scorpio risings, this might even change or shift your attitude to children. It might bring that maturity that you're responsible for a child. Maybe you're going to become a parent, which is a very exciting journey and all the ups and downs it has. For some Scorpio risings, this might be a lack of love life too, a lack of romance, a lack of that play. And this might be in part because you're deciding what it is you actually really want out of that part of your life. And maybe you're not ready, you're over the flings or the one night stands or the very short-lived relationships, and you actually want something that's more real and true and special. So you might even opt for a period of celibacy in this time, or maybe it just happens by default and not by choice, but it can be a worthwhile thing in some parts, in some stages of your life. Okay, so Libra. So if you are a Libran, 6th house, this can be interesting. It can go a couple of ways. Again, health. Okay, so whenever the 1st or the 6th is activated by Saturn, it can be, being that sort of slave to your health or a slave to your body. It might need more care and maintenance than you're used to doing. Okay, that could be you've got more miles under the belt, or maybe you've done a bit of damage and you need to rein it in. Okay, so whether that is putting on weight or you've been indulging in things that aren't good for you, and it's like, nope, I need to get back on that Saturnian straight and narrow. Sometimes a health condition that's kind of chronic can pop up under Saturn, which may take a great effort to get to the bottom of or treat, or there just may be more hard work to maintain a sense of neutrality in that area of life. So I know people who have various chronic health issues, and a big part of their work is just feeling reasonable every day. And, sorry to say that, Libra risings, but it could be something that comes up for you. So nip it in the bud and start doing what your body, mind, and spirit, need now. On the more practical standpoint, it can also be a period of apprenticeship or intern, like being an intern as such, where you might need to go back on the tools or go back to the books to develop more practical skills that can help you in a professional setting. So for some people, that might mean you have to take a pay cut. Maybe you have to take a posting somewhere you don't want to go. I see this happen a lot, whether someone's in the military or they're in teaching, and they might have to go to a location they'd rather not go. They spend a couple of years there, but when they come back, they know that they're going to have more of a prestigious posting or get the pay raise that they want after that sort of period of proving oneself, if you like. So this can be a period of time where you have to do double effort for half the reward. It can feel a little bit thankless. So you might have to, you might feel unrecognized, unrewarded, a bit of a subordinate period of time. But there's a way you can work with this effectively. There is subordination in the sense where you just have to do some crappy job just to get in a few extra bucks, but it's not got any long-term prospects. You might want to avoid that if you can. But if you get the chance to, take a step back in order to, like 2 steps back in order to take a step forward, for the long term, that might be something worth considering. So maybe, again, like the idea of going to a location you'd rather not go to, so you can, put money in the bank or get another feather in your professional cap, so to speak. So yeah, it can just be, it's a bit of a buzzkill, Saturn in the 6th. It is what it is. The 7th. So if you're Virgo, Virgo rising, this is potentially could be a make or break period romantically or in love, in relationships. So if your current squeeze, the two of you are just limping along, then this is going to be, well, are we going anywhere? Have we come to the end of the road? This, I mentioned this to the membership. It reminds me a bit of, I think it was when, what's his name, Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow got divorced, and it was like a conscious uncoupling. And that's what happened with Saturn, because it's, going to bring that maturity to the breakup. Okay, like we're just deciding mutually as two consenting adults that this isn't for us anymore. On the flip side, this can be indicative of commitment and, something really solid like marriage, or, what other ceremony that you can do together that really ties your commitment. Nothing nothing is quite like marriage in terms of its kind of like lineage through time. But of course, we can do that in a variety of ways nowadays. So new commitments are possible. It just doesn't have to be with one-on-one like marriage. It can also be professional. So professional partners, one-on-one clients. You might be, if you're branching out and working for yourself, then this might be about attracting clients who are going to be with you for the long haul. This can also bring, again, a real clear distinction around what you want in relationships. With Pisces on the 7th, that can be a little bit more of a permeable, kissing a few frogs type of energy there. But when Saturn comes through, you get to decide what you really want in partnership, okay, what you're available for and what you're not. And it's going to help you be maybe less kind of, that Virgo rising can have a propensity to get into relationship and try and be their best and fix things or make things better. But this might be drawing a proverbial line in the sand and going, this is what I want in relationship. So it can really help to solidify the bonds that you share. And it may also reveal that some of those bonds are just, they're not going to last the distance. Okay. That's Saturn for you. So Leo, I'm going to just take a sip of my drink there. Okay. So Leo, money mastery. Okay. Big time. So debts, taxes, money that you owe, shared resources that you have with others. So whether that's a spouse, a partner, the bank, a business partner. So this is about, getting mature in that area and adulting. Maybe you're thinking, okay, well, I'm XYZ age and I need to do something for my retirement. Maybe you want to put more money in your super or your 401ks and the various things that they're called around the world. This is a, death and taxes house. And so this can be the death of people. It's possible. It's definitely, that's the white elephant there. Just get that one out of the room early. But it's also the death of entanglements. And those are sometimes entanglements that we don't that lie beneath the surface, right? This is 8th house stuff. So fears and phobias, maybe around money, maybe about commitment, maybe about debt. Maybe you have a pesky credit card that you just never get it down. And, on the black and white, yes, it's money, but underneath that, it's like, well, what are the choices you continually make that lead you into that position, and addressing those? So it can be a real beautiful transit in the sense that it can be very clarifying, empowering, and help you get to the bottom of money stuff. It can also, again, be a consolidating influence. So, obviously interest rates and all of that sort of stuff is going up and expenses are going up. So Saturn can really help you shave or consolidate or tighten the ship in terms of the overheads, right? So maybe you can get a better deal on your mortgage with a different bank or a different credit card, or maybe you can consolidate with somebody else and make your expenses cheaper. In my opinion, I think for a lot of people, going back to old ways of living is going to be really helpful. I'm here for it. And that might be something that, as a Leo rising, you might feel like you really need to do. Inheritances, of course, are a part of this transit. And usually when we think inheritances, it's what happens after death. And while that can definitely be true, but sometimes you can inherit a legacy. I had this actually when Saturn was in Capricorn and in my own 8th house, where I inherited like a professional opportunity that someone was retiring from, and it got passed down to me. So I guess it was the death of that kind of avenue, professional avenue for one astrologer, and I was able to pick that up. It can happen. So inheriting a legacy of some kind doesn't have to be through the result of death. Maybe it's somebody else retiring or not wanting to do that line of work before. I've seen it happen where, someone retires and they refer clients to you, for instance, or maybe you get overflow through someone else. Because remember, it's also about joint resources. And for Leo risings, you're just going to have Pluto come into the 7th. So there's a double whammy there with other people. But emotional entanglements, fears, loss. So this can be a very healing phase, and that might be emotionally, financially, issues around commitment, or all of the above. Cancer, 9th house. This is going to be lovely. It's about travel, adventure, discovery, meaning and purpose, and spirituality. I wouldn't be surprised if there's plenty of Cancer risings out there that discover astrology at this time, or if they've been teetering on the edges of interest, that they decide to commit to a teacher or a learning pathway. For some Cancers, this might be, well, I'm going to go back to uni and finish my degree, or get a postgraduate degree, a PhD, or what have you. So something to do with education or higher learning. Could also be about the esoteric arts, the occult arts, or academia as well. All those are possibilities. Maybe you publish a book, put something out there in print, or publish a website is also possible, getting your name out there from that respect. God, in whichever form it takes for you, may become more apparent or more important to you. Some type of spirituality or practice around that part of your life. When it comes to, holidays, vacations, rather than just doing your usual destination, maybe you would prefer to go to somewhere that has a bit more of a meaningful experience. So somewhere that's different or exotic, like from a cultural or religious perspective. So, I'm in Australia. If I went to New Zealand, yeah, same, but different. But if I went to India or the Middle East or something like that, then that's sort of culturally, in every way imaginable, is very different. That will shift your perspective on life, which is very much what the ninth house does. You know, the ninth house is about how the world can open up for you. And that can be through education. It can be through study. It can also be through the partaking in certain substances too. So, you know, it's all about opening up connections to a God-like entity and changing the perspectives on life. Okay, Gemini risings, of which I am one. Career. Career is going to be a big, you know, issue. So it might be like, what am I doing? Where am I going? What am I going to commit to? Where do I see myself in 30 years' time? Which does seem like a really ridiculous notion. And I can promise you, 30 years ago, I had no idea I'd be doing what I'm doing now, despite the fact that I still held the interest in astrology. I had my eyes on a very different pathway at that point in time. But when I reflect on it more deeply, there's definitely a lot of things that I knew then that I still know now and continue to manifest now. So again, it's not, when we look at astrology and life cycles and the circle that we go around and around on, it's sort of, it has a way of coming back around again. Very Tool, very Saturn, you know, if you know Tool, you'll know what I'm talking about. But, you know, it does lift you up like a child and take you round again. And so, you know, don't, you know, for everybody, it doesn't matter which house we're talking about, don't think, oh my God, I've got to make decisions that are going to have a karmic debt attached, or are going to have that reap what you sow 30 years from now, and I've got to get that right. It's an evolving process with changes and forks in the road, you know. So don't, especially for those who are newer to astrology, don't feel like you've got to be sowing the right seeds to harvest in 30 years' time. There's going to be many chances to do that. So don't be hard on yourself. Don't think, if I make this career shift in my life right now, then I'm committed to it for 30 years. For some, it may be the case. I couldn't imagine having a job for 30 years. Now, when I talk about jobs, careers, etc., I don't just mean like what you do to get paid. Traditionally, the 10th house is so much more than that. It's about the direction of your life. Okay. You know, what is the overall direction of your life? Where do you want that to go? You know, do you want to be known or recognized for this or for that? Reputation is very big there. So, you know, what can you start now that will have an ongoing legacy moving forward for you? So big choices about your life direction. So like those Pisces risings, and I mentioned it being a bit like a CEO of your life, this also applies, I think, to when it's the 10th house. You know, those big overarching CEO decisions that are going to have impacts in all of the other parts of your life. In some of the traditional writings on houses, the 10th was also associated with marriage. Okay. And, you know, your name literally changes. You become somebody else's wife or somebody else's husband. And, you know, you might be Mrs. So-and-so instead of who you've been all of this time, traditionally speaking. So that can also be a case for some people, because your public identity changes, which is very 10th house. The reverse may be true, where you reclaim your name if you opt to get divorced, or just the image that you have publicly that you're no longer so-and-so's wife, husband, what have you. But it's a big one. It's big decisions, big changes in the overall life direction. Or maybe it's a recommitment to something that you started a little while ago, or that sort of manifestation that you're gaining some kind of traction or movement or momentum. Things are coming to life. So say, for example, if you've been, you know, at uni for the last 4 years, and then Saturn comes into the 10th house rather, and it's like, okay, you've got your qualification, you've been recognized as a, you know, expert in your field, you've got this piece of paper, you've got this degree, now you are qualified. Yes, you've got Saturn's blessing to go and practice, you know, medicine or magic or whatever it is, right? So it can be a whole multitude of things. And maybe this next 2 years is about deciding or morphing that direction. You know, maybe you have that Saturnian umbrella as being something or someone, but how can that kind of be a little bit permeable as you swim in that Pisces way into other directions? The 11th. So this is Taurus. It's going to be interesting because the 11th house is a lucky house and Saturn comes there. I'll often describe this to people. By the end of this transit, you'll know who your friends are, who your supporters are, and who the people who really are there to fan your flames. It could be like this idea, you know how in jobs, in some career paths, they have this thing where you have like an annual review about your performance. We don't do that for our friends, right? But this might be a time that would be wise where you go, well, through the course of the next 2 years, you know, who's really there for me? Who am I there for? And really, you'll get to understand the notion of a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So Saturn's going to be that qualifier. Yeah, some people come in for a reason, you learn something. Some people come in for a season. Again, it's a chapter of your life. But then the lifetime are those, you know, I have that with my water trio girls, and I'm sure you know Kelly and Alicia. They're my lifetime friends. And, you know, to have traditionally, you know, we're not talking Facebook friends, where those Saturn's going to show you who those friends are. You can call at 3 a.m. and go, I've done something really bad, and they'll come and clean up the mess for you. Obviously, that's a far-flung example, but you get the gist, right? You can call them at any time of day or night, and they're not going to even ask you, why are you calling at this hour? It's going to be, how can I help? Or what's wrong? Or you know, I'll be there in 20 minutes kind of thing. So that's for Taurus rising. So you might also find it's generally a less lucky period. So you've had a lot of luck with Jupiter there in Pisces. So that's a bit of a double luck phase. So in comparison to that, it might feel like that's dried up a bit. So your connection, you know, the road rising up to meet you, well, maybe it's a steeper road than what you've been traveling on for the last little bit. So things that came to you easily may not now. So you might have to work harder or for longer to gain momentum or traction. This could be with your followers on various social media or gaining clients. For some Taurus risings, this might be establishing yourself as a elder or a leader or the rock in a community or a group or an organization that you've either created or that you are involved with. So you might find yourself taking more responsibility in those areas of life with groups and communities too. You might even find yourself a bit isolated from friends, from groups, or from those communities, especially if those 15-minute cities come in. But anyway, we're keeping it personal, but you get my gist, right? So you might have to really just commit to those friendships. Like they might take a little bit more work if distance becomes a part of the zeitgeist. Okay, so if you're Aries, it's going to be your 12th house. And so this is going to be interesting because Saturn finds its joy in the 12th. So it's relatively happy there. But this for sure is going to be a bit of a lower energy, a hermit-like phase. You've still got Jupiter moving through your first house. So there is that sort of energizer bunny saying yes to all the things. But there's that burning the candle at both ends. You know, Saturn saying slow down, go slow, rest and retreat more, but Jupiter still kind of, you know, going crazy in the first house, saying yes to all the things. So it's going to be a little bit of a messy until May, when Jupiter settles into Taurus, and that might be where you can start to embody Saturn a little bit more. And I'm not suggesting you have to stop and become a hermit, but it might mean you have to commit to taking more rest. That might look like, okay, I don't answer emails from work on the weekend. It might look like social media can do without a post from me this week. I just need a detox from it. It might look like planning more weekends away, or getting off the reel or the proverbial grid every now and then. It might mean making yourself less available to other people so you can start saying yes to yourself a little bit more. So rest, retreat is going to be more important. Really about emotions. It's water. Whatever element your 12th house is going to show you where, which will be the same as the 8th as well, but it will show you where it's the element that can sometimes be hard for you to tap into. So it might be your emotions, being Aries. Aries is head first, whereas Pisces, like, yeah, how does it feel before you go and take that action? So that might be the dynamic or the duality that you're going to be working with a little bit. It also might mean about this idea of compassion fatigue. How much can you give to other people if you're not giving back to yourself? Okay. It might be a time of rest, retreat, reclusiveness, and healing, big time. So whatever way, shape, or form that takes for you, it might mean more like professional kind of healing journeys, magical healing journeys, just more time by the beach with nature, dreaming, imagining. Because before you know it, Saturn and Neptune will be in the first house, and Pisces time will seem like a distant dream and memory, which is pretty much part of this cycle. So I hope you found that helpful, informative, inspiring. If you like this, share it with an astro friend or someone who might resonate with this and enjoy it. And until next time, I'll definitely see you then. Okay, see ya.